conflict, we all been suffering because of that. I already lost my uncle in 2000. He was murdered violently in the entrance of Beit Umar. And also in the 2004, my second uncle, who's 16 years old, in the entrance of his house in Bethlehem. And I also, my older brother, he was in jail twice for the same reason.
Is this Ali?
What?
Are you talking about Ali Abu Awwad? Is that your brother?
No, my brother is Muhammad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you're Shadi Abu Awwad, but you're not related to Ali Abu Awwad?
I am related to Ali.
Oh.
Yeah, Ali is my uncle.
Oh, your uncle?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll find so many from Abu Awad's family because we are working for peace and non-violence since 2002. All of us, we decided to take this back. So in 2009, my brother was arrested for, working in demonstration against the occupation. And he spent 2 years in jail, and then they released him, and in the 2015 they decided that 2 years was not enough. So they took him again for the same reason, for the same case, which is illegal. And he will spend another 2 years there. So this is just small part from the Palestinian suffering through this occupation and through this conflict that we have here. So people asking us all the time, you have been through all that in your life. You lost many people you love, and many people you want were injured or were in jail. How come you accept to sit with Israelis and to talk about peace? Why you just don't think about your revenge or about just fighting to send these people away from this land, our land? Then I just give them this answer, that I already had so much pain from losing people that I love, and I guess I'm not ready to have more pain. I'm not ready for more pain. And if I will continue in our way, I will have so much pain in my life. I will just reach a point that I will lose everybody I love. So must be something wrong in my way. I need to change it. Maybe just fighting for revenge, fighting for my anger, for my freedom in a violence way, it's just not the right way to do it. I start to think about how we can do it, how we can have our freedom, how we can have our dignity. We are, as a Palestinian, we are free people, but not free citizens. Because each time you want to move from your house, you cannot just say, okay, I'm sure I want to go to that city. You can say, I will try to go. Because you cannot be sure that in this checkpoint they will let you pass or not. Or maybe the entrance of your city or your village is open, or they have that checkpoint, they close it. So we decide that we will work for peace and non-violence, but we will not be peace makers. We will create our own peace. The peace that we believe in, that I believe in as Shadi. The peace that you cannot build that peace on just feeling sorry for each other or for what we have been through. The peace that we can build in dignity. The peace that we will live in dignity, we will have our right. It will not come from our weakness. It will come from our power, from our strength. The peace, you cannot just build it on anger. So I think we're working for that peace, and we are paying high price for working for that peace now. The high price is that when you work in peace in this kind of conflict, which is unique conflict, you cannot face this kind of conflict anywhere else. People will start to look at you as traitor. People will start just to ignore you and to hate you and not to accept what you are doing. But I believe in the end I will get all the support from all these people around, because I believe what I'm doing gonna just save our next generation from living the same way that we lived. We don't want them to suffer as we suffer. So we decided to talk to Israelis because in the end we are a human being. So we thought, okay, when they shoot my uncle, it was one soldier's fault, and we will never accept that soldier in our life. But is that a reason to hate all the Israeli society? Is that a reason to hate all the Jewish people in this country? When my brother got injured in 2006, we took him to a Palestinian hospital, which they say, okay, there's no chance, he's gonna die. Then a friend of us from Israel, he decided to help us to take him to Hadassah and Karim Hospital inside Jerusalem. And there, thousands of Israelis saved my brother's life there. So they don't deserve from me to hate them because of the soldier that he shot my brother. In that time, I figured out that I think if we want to have that peace, we should have our own peace between us and the people, just to take ourselves out of this political game that we have here. Because this occupation is just a political game using the people inside it. These settlements here around us, these settlements we suffer. We are paying price because these settlements in our lands, taking our rights, taking our freedom. We cannot move freely in our side of the country because we have these settlements around. So they use that as excuse that we should put checkpoint, we should close this road, we should close this place. You cannot come to your land, which is close to this settlement. We're paying the price of that occupation. But on the other hand, we are talking to settlers, and we are trying to have peace with the settlers. And settlers, for us, and I would say for me, have nothing to do with settlements, because the Jewish people who live here next to me, the same Jewish people that lives inside Tel Aviv, the same people that lives in Netanya. We will not allow the politics to make that peace, or the other peacemakers to make that peace as peace for lefties and the righties people. Like, to divide this peace. Like, to have peace with settlers and peace with the Jewish people inside. أجاك يا مان. Born in the big city. Because in the end, all of us the same. Why I can have peace and I can go and talk to the one who lives inside Tel Aviv, and I cannot talk to the one who's just living next to me? Which is the most important thing, that I should know who lives inside that settlement. And that doesn't mean that I accept that settlement. No, I'm against the occupation and against this conflict and against these houses and the settlements inside my land. But I'm not against people as human beings. Maybe I cannot blame them for their political game, that their authority decide to have these settlements and people live inside it. I think me and them, we should stand against that authority, against that political people who's trying to put us inside this conflict and to use us as their weapon. Because in this conflict, the real weapon is not the guns. No, not the guns. Not even the tanks, not anything. Only people. Only the people. Yeah. They're playing with people. So our job is just to meet each other and to understand each other and to be smart enough to take ourselves from that game and just to stand against this occupation together as a Palestinian and Israeli settler and Israeli Jewish. We should stand together against that occupation. We should not be weak. I am Palestinian, I want peace, okay, but I don't want to see any soldier inside in the entrance of my village. I don't want to see any soldier in my way, in my side, in my country. Peace is not giving up. This is what most of the people here don't understand. When you tell them I want to have peace with the Israelis, they say, so that means you are a traitor, you are giving up. But no, it's not giving up. Peace is power. Peace is living in dignity. Peace is a style of life. When you live in peace, and when you live for non-violence, you force people to accept your dignity and to accept you as a citizen. Peace is commit. because you cannot just say I want to live in peace and just let it go then. No, peace is a style of life and is commit from both sides, from both governments. So our job is to force that government to stick with that commit. Because I'm always hearing them, both of them, negotiation about peace. But do I see that in my land? Do I see that in my life? I'm until now suffering every day from the moment I wake up and start to move from my house until the moment that I will go back to my bed. Well, I'm suffering through all this day, me as well as every Palestinian citizen. So I think the peace that both of them are talking about, it's not the peace that fits for us. We should make our own peace, to create our own peace. And to be fair, for the Israeli side, it's easier to accept this idea and to come and to listen and to hear, to understand what we are talking about, what we are working for. But it's harder for the Palestinian side because you cannot just bring someone who already lost all his family because of this occupation, already suffering through his whole years through this occupation, and to tell him, come, just here's an Israeli and go shake hands, go hug him. He would say no. He will refuse because he's full of anger inside. I think first of all we need to go to that person. We need to let him understand the fact that we're living in. And then just slowly to let him look at the people as a human, not as all of them his enemy. Just to open his eyes to his right enemy. Just the enemy who's causing all that pain for him. And then to try to convince him to accept people as what they are. Maybe you can just go and meet with that person. Maybe he will protect you. Maybe you will protect him. Maybe you can have life together. The moment when both of you have life together, nobody can take that life from both of you. When you live together in peace, you're just forcing your governments to commit that peace and to admit that peace. Because you are the citizens who live in this land. You're having peace between each other. The government cannot do anything about that. They can just respect it and we can force them to do it. That's the right way for me, how to do it. Many people were coming to me and telling me, you should change your way. We love you as a person, but we are not okay with you for what you are doing. Then I just told them, okay, I'll be with you, you're Palestinian, you're my friend. I'll go with you, whatever you want. Just tell me your way and I will give all that peace. Just forget all what I was talking about, I'll put it aside. I want to come with you. Just give me a solution that will not cause my death in the end. Because if you are talking about where to survive, I guess we need to have somebody who will survive in the end. But in your way, nobody will survive. So it's useless. Why to keep killing each other? Why to keep hurting each other? And in the end, none of us will just live and, celebrate that victory. Then he just don't have an answer. Because he knows that I'm right. But he just don't have the courage to admit it. And I don't blame them because it's not easy. If you want to work peace, you should have three things: courage, patience, and hope. And the patience is the most important thing. And you should not expect so much from what you are doing because you will get disappointed soon. Because what you are doing is doing a change inside this world. And to do a change, you have to be strong enough. You have to wait for that change. I'm working for peace. I don't expect to have this peace in my life. But I'm sure that one of my generation will live in that peace. Every Israeli person that I meet here and I talk to, and now we have the youth project that I'm also leading with Roots. That youth project that we bring two groups from youth, from the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, I hate to say that because I'm leading that group, so I always say I have my youth. I don't say just the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. I want them to have this idea that first of all they deal with each other as a human being, and then when you like each other, start to think where you're from, what's your religion, and this stuff. Because the moment if you will not start with each other as a human being, you will just have many reasons that I don't want to talk with this person. So we have that project. It's about bringing this youth and making them leaders for us, to lead the next generation of youth for the next year. Yeah. We start for 3 months from now when we had Ramadan, and we had, the dinner, Ramadan dinner after fasting the whole day together, and it was great. So every time I sit, especially with the Israeli youth, I just say each new youth that I meet, I tell them something. Tell them something that you're the kind of person that I would love, and I will just give you a push to go to the army, to be a soldier. Then he just looked at me and told me, "You're Palestinian, right?" I told him, "Yeah." "And you want me to go to the army?" "Yeah." "The army, that checkpoint?" I told him, "Yeah, I would love if you would go to that army. I want you to go. Maybe I can help you to go." Then it's just awkward for him. Then he asked why. And my answer is to save my people's life. Because at the moment we'll have in that army someone who already know us and who already know the other face for the Palestinian people, for the Palestinian society. I think he will think not twice, 10 times before shooting at anyone. So this is part of our life here. This is part of what we are doing here. And by the way, what we are doing here, you cannot do it as Palestinians and Israelis. You are the third part in this conflict. Even you're living away, but I think all of you knows that you are the third part in this occupation, in this conflict, because we together we cannot do that without the united power of the world. So I have a chance to start.
Thanks. I'm sorry I was late. I thought, well, actually the truth is you're early, but I got the message that we're starting at 2:30.
Yeah.
So I arranged to pick up my daughter from there and bring her there, and then to go, and actually just came back. Last week there was a horrible traffic accident. A Palestinian young girl was crossing the street in the nighttime and was run over by a Jew traveling back to Efrat, driving fast. And just a little girl, 5 years old. Whatever, there's the police is in their thing, but we brought a bunch of women from Efrat, went over to go visit the family in the morning house, and got stuck in traffic there too a little bit. So I guess I'll just back up. You're coming from the Euphoria Institute, is this right?
Oh, that would be nice.
The Euphoria, right?
I like that.
Where are you? What's your trip? Just
Euphrates, we're
Euphrates.
Euphrates, like the river.
Right. No, sorry, that's right.
Yeah. But I like Euphoria.
It's the same. It's the same. Hebrew and Arabic with roots, like root words. So Euphoria. Euphrates. I looked a little.
Helping Americans be more informed about the Middle East in general, and about roots of extremism and terrorism, and then also what's a different way of thinking about things, a way of peace and nonviolence. And so specifically with this conflict, we're trying to hear both sides and understand narratives and the role of narrative and story and mindset. And then also, there's a mindset that is sort of like Einstein's idea that problems can't be solved at the same level of thinking that created them. The violent mindset, and then a completely different mindset that can accommodate everyone.
Right. Great. And were you from North America, all across North America, or a certain place?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
One Canadian.
Okay. So I said North America to be fair to all. Inclusive. So I'll back up and just tell kind of a personal story also. My name's Shaul Judelman. I'm with Shadi's uncle Ali. We're kind of the co-directors of this project, but it's really there's a project, but really what's going on here is trying to build a bit of a movement, and it's our focus here is very local. It's a very locally based project. Because I believe that's part of the work that gets lost in this big international politics perspective. I'm going to back up a lot, actually. I'm going to go back. My family, we moved to the United States when I was about 2. I grew up in Seattle. And represent? Great. Yeah, okay. Nice. We'll talk later. And I grew up there, being immigrants to the States. I remember, like, as a little kid, I just remember when friends would say we're going to our cousin's house, and I always had this question: where are our cousins? Where are we from? And my family, fled Eastern Europe just before the Second World War. Some went to South Africa, some came to Israel, some came all over. But growing up, that question of where are we from, who are we? My sense of being a part of the Jewish people was always feeling deep, and from a young age, Israel was home in some epic way. I knew that where are we from? We're ultimately from there. Being a little kid going to rallies for freedom for Soviet Jewry or for getting Ethiopian Jewry out of Ethiopia before the famine, this kind of Jewish identity or sense of people. I didn't grow up in a religious home, kind of like not religiously observant. We go to synagogue on the holidays, kind of thing, and connected. But I always say, with the last name like Judelman, how far can you go? So in university, I guess I'll skip forward. So I really wanted to come. I came to Israel when I was in high school in like a youth group program, and was really felt connected, and it was really a powerful trip. And I made 2 decisions from that. One is I have to come back, and the other one is I'm never going on a group trip again. Because you know how it is. You meet somebody interesting and you want to go and hang out, then you have to go back to them. I'm sure you do. Those understand. So in college, actually, I was planning on, my major, you did a semester abroad. And people were going to Nepal and to Zimbabwe and all over. And for me, it was clear that I have to first come back here. But in college, one thing that was kind of an experience for me that kind of colored what I came here to do, I guess, I got to spend some time in Northeast Arizona with the Diné people, the Navajo people on the reservation there. And it was with kind of very traditional families and there's a whole political story going on there too. It was something struck me being there, of seeing a people on their land with their language and their culture and their religion and standing up for that. And actually a conversation with a woman, with a leader of a family there, it was very powerful, kind of left me, kind of put the context of my trip for coming back to my people's land. And she said to me, what we're standing up for is our people's traditional ways in our land. And to stand for us is to stand for the ways of your people in your land. And a few months later I arrived here. So I arrived looking for kind of a Judaism in Israel that was connected both to the land and to the tradition. So I came to a kibbutz. I found a kibbutz that did organic farming and was a religious kibbutz. For me, I kind of thought, before Google, kind of just called somebody and they told me about this place. I said, okay. And I arrived there in the summer of 2000, early August. And I say 2 things about the beginning of that experience. One was, just like now, we're 2 weeks, a week and a half before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And that year, the Jewish New Year, that year brought in what's called the Shemitah, or sabbatical year. The Bible skills are, remember from the Bible, there's a commandment there that 6 years you will work the land, and the 7th year you will let the land lie fallow. There's also a commandment there to release debt at the end of the 7th year. And it was really interesting being on a kibbutz that was completely agricultural, because on the kibbutz they're talking about, what do we do with this commandment on the books? How do we observe this? To observe the Shabbat, I light the Shabbat candles, I stop working to keep kosher. But here all of a sudden I found, for me, what really was the beginning of kind of a much deeper sense of Zionism, of what it means, the Jewish country. And I tell this part not because I'm a rabbi, but because it comes also to bear actually on how we can deal with this conflict and manage both people's relationships and identities in this land. So all of a sudden I started thinking that Judaism is not a religion, it's our people. And here these commandments are really a guide for what kind of society we're going to build in our land. And it's, like I said, it's not just religious commandments. They're Shemitah, and the question there was about economic responsibility, social justice, about haves and have-nots in that relationship, the debt relief. People get stuck in the cycle of that. How do we undo that? And it was a very, very amazing time for me on that period, like kind of opening this connection to Judaism and what it means Israel and what's going on here. Intifada. And after a few months on kibbutz, the bus rides, sometimes they'd go on and sometimes you couldn't get to Jerusalem. I remember arriving in Jerusalem actually for Rosh Hashanah that year, and I got off the bus and there was about 5.5 hours straight of sirens, because Shaul was on the Temple Mount and the riots broke out, and it was, welcome to Judaism, welcome to the conflict, welcome to the land. The like a yeshiva, and I spent the next 6 years living, learning in the yeshiva, and living the conflict. And I often say, when you guys are hearing narratives, I'm going to say something maybe. The conflict doesn't happen between Israelis and Palestinians. That's not where the conflict lies. That's what it's called in the objective media. The conflicts, especially violent conflicts, take place between two groups in every situation, between us and them. And those lines are very sharp in violent conflict. You can't fudge them. And if I look back at my own sense, I came here. I was a teenager in the '90s. I'm 37 now. When Oslo was signed, it was a great moment of hope. There was a sense that something's going to change. As a kid growing up, watching the first Intifada on the television, and the Gulf War, and the Scud missiles, and everything in this, and your history. What do you learn in Israeli history? You learn about 1948 and the war. You learn 1956, 1967, 73, 82, and you learn about the wars. And Oslo was this hope that maybe this is something's going to change. And there was a deep hope, and there really was a hope. There was so much more hope than there is today. Because now, what there is largely despair. But like I said, I came here with that in the sense that if land for peace, if that's what it takes, it's a price we're willing. Maybe that's the price that it takes, and okay. And I just reflect back over the next few years living here. I'd say my politics went to the right. Just for you guys, but just farther and farther to the right. And I think it's important to understand politics here is not, is the question between our political leaderships really. Where's the line going to be? Where's the border going to be? Is that really the question? Is that what's holding us back? Why can't our leaders on either sides make strong moves for peace? Because both of our peoples are not interested in hearing about that peace right now. Because we've tasted peace. It tastes like 3 times as many settlers. It tastes like checkpoints. It tastes like suicide bombings. It tastes like shootings. It tastes like terrorism. It tastes like everything we felt since the legacy of peace. And I want to point out that for me, those next 5 years living here was living here in this area, in the Gush, and being a part of the community was funerals and being attacked and responding. And I often say we're on a mountain range here, this little piece of land, what we call the Judean mountains, the mountains of Hebron. And there's two sides of this mountain range, and it's not Palestinians on one and Israelis on the other. It's two perceptions of what is this conflict, of what is this reality. Some people live in the perception or the reality, the movie that there's a peace process that broke down and it needs to be restarted, kickstarted, and we have to get back to negotiations, and that we can find we'll negotiate a settlement for this conflict. On the other side of this mountain range, who can't see across to each other, there's a different perception of this conflict that many people live with. That don't delude yourself with peace agreements. You think there's a partner over there? Where this is just an existential conflict. It's an existential war of who is going to win. And to not recognize that and think that they'd ever come to terms and give us anything, or agree to our presence here, or honor our connection here, is you're joking. Because look who Israel appointed the defense minister. Look what the Fatah party put on their Facebook page. Look at this, look at this. And I'm sure you guys have been going around and listening to narratives. I'm sure you hear lots of people trying to prove to you how we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. We're the victims, not them. And the story, the narrative, the place of victimhood is a deep part of this conflict. If anybody's interested in victim psychology, that's what's going on. Everything you hear, meaning it's all on them at this point, because both sides have the story that we did everything we could for peace. Palestinians gave up 78% of Palestine for this agreement, and we still can't have it, and you're still taking more land. And for us to give away what's the heartland of Jewish people, and still not feel like we got anything back. And each of our stories, I'm sure you've heard them all presented to you in very nice ways, right? I think I know you just talked to me. So for me too, I mean, that I'd say specifically on the Israeli side, the fear and the anger, that's what drives the conflict, suffering, and ultimately despair. And those are emotions. They're not political things they talk about when John Kerry arrives. Those are what people feel in their hearts. It's the experience of the conflict, and losing a friend, losing a cousin in a suicide bomb, going to school in Netanya. Those are the things that guide our politics, and they end up showing back there on our decisions on a day-to-day basis, which end up being political decisions. And what do we think, and what do we believe, and what's possible. And really, there's a poll came out not so long ago. It said, I'll give a couple of statistics here because they're sometimes just interesting to reflect on. I remember a poll about 2 years ago. So it said 80% of Israelis agree with the two-state solution, are willing for the two-state solution. But 80% of Israelis don't think they'll ever see it in their lifetime. Yeah, we agree philanthropy is two states for two peoples, okay, but really, like, look, it's not, and you end up with this deep sense of despair, and that's despair. Fear, I can tell you, by living here, fear is a very real part of life, for everyone's life here. When Islam just told me about going to visit Kiryat Arba and should I get out the car and pray or not, every time we're driving by the checkpoint here, for me sitting on the side of the road, they're waiting for a hitchhike. 2 years ago, 3 boys were sitting for a hitchhiker waiting for their car to come by. The car pulled up, they got on, looked like a couple of religious guys, and 15 minutes later they were shot in their heads and their bodies weren't found until 3 weeks later. The rock throwing, the Molotov cocktails, each side has their own stories of what causes fear, but fear is a very powerful, captivating and captures you, it holds you. I remember this year on Independence, like around Israeli Independence Day, they had polls went out about where people are thinking, and I think it said over 65% of Israelis said on a daily basis they fear losing somebody to an attack. It's hard to talk about making peace when you have a very palpable fear about making concessions or any of that, when that's really what's holding us. And I want to put out, that's what I think the core, the suffering, anger, fear, and everything that goes along with that, that's where the conflict really lies. And trust. My politics just kind of went from all these experiences, saying just, wake up and smell the coffee, dude. This is not California, this is not Seattle. This is the struggle for survival, and they're not interested in us surviving here. And that's, I can't really fault anybody for reading reality that way on either side. That's their reading, and that's their experience, and that's their perspective. For me, I think I think also, like, for a long time I could hold that what we us call terror for somebody else's resistance, and a suicide bomb somewhere is maybe that's that person's way, that's their way of resistance, and you can justify why resistance is justified in that. I could hold that dynamic of resistance is terrorism. It's the same two perspectives, and that lasted for a while until in my town there was a little boy who was a little 12-year-old kid who I used to carry on my shoulders and dance with him on the holidays, and he was murdered with an axe out in the back of his head by a Palestinian who stuck into our town. And I think for me that something snapped in that moment. Something about I'd lost people before, but there's something about that. This is not resistance. This is hatred and murder and anger, and there's no peace to be had with them. Just hold on and be strong, and that's reality. And I remember after that the feelings, the feeling of just hatred and that anger and how powerful that is, how real that is, and how it controls you, how it guides you. And that's the reality of the conflict. That's the reality of violent conflict. What kind of started challenging me, I remember soon after that reading something in the Talmud in the yeshiva. I was learning in yeshiva, like a quote from the Talmud says, "Kol ha'ko'es ki'ilu oved avodah zarah." Anyone who gets angry, it's as if they're an idolater. Which is kind of a cardinal sin in monotheistic religion. Don't pray to an idol. Because anyone who gets angry, it's as if they've served an idol. I remember thinking about that, thinking about the anger, and thinking about how it's how powerful it is, like a rage, a fit of rage, where it sends us to. But I think the most kind of important figure in my process here was my rabbi, who's somebody named Rabbi Menachem Froman. People heard that name before? So I think anybody interested in really deepening understanding the conflict, Menachem Froman, Froman, you can Google, and there's plenty of stuff. He passed away 3 years ago. This project in many ways is kind of just a continuation, very much a continuation of what he taught and the work he did. And I want to tell just a little, in 1967, after the war, there came the chance for our people to return. So it really is the heart of our people. And Tel Aviv is wonderful, Haifa is a great town. If you read the Bible, it's not mentioned there. Really the heart of, and actually about a year and a half ago we actually had a visitor here who was a Palestinian kind of general in the first Intifada, who was part of Arafat's negotiation team, was a close, very much in Palestinian leadership. And he was reflecting back, he was involved with kind of things leading up to Oslo and afterwards Camp David. And he said there's a problem with Oslo, with that model. And he said because 95% of your Jewish historical sites, your heritage is here in the West Bank. And right, who assassinated our Prime Minister was a Jew who said, you have no right, Mr. Prime Minister, to give away our heartland. And for us, the language of life here is about return. You can agree, disagree, but for us, for our people, the story, we're coming back to Beit Lechem, to Bethlehem, to Hebron. This little hill over here is called Migdal Eder, and this little town here is Migdal Oz. And for us, there's a deep sense of return and renaissance here. And when I lived in Bat Ayin, at the entrance to the town, there's a when they built the road, they uncovered their the remains of an ancient wine press in an ancient town called Tachlichi, where they recognized it in kind of the Second Temple period as a Jewish town where they made wine, and they took their wine from there to the temple in Jerusalem. And here I am, making my wine, going to the mikveh there in the middle of the night when it fills up with water, with the ritual baths, and in a deep sense of return. So Rav Fruman felt that part of our people's return, but from the beginning, and he was part of what's called Gush Emunim, kind of like the main religious Zionist settlement, kind of to recreate Jewish life here, make facts on the ground, all that stuff. But from the beginning of his taking part in that, he also said a few other things a little bit against the grain. One thing he said, our people's story of return cannot become another people's story of exile. If we look at what our people's story of return is about, even on the Jewish level, it's not about we won and they lost. It's about bringing some kind of new era and some kind of place in humanity growing. And the other thing he pointed out was one of the core questions in this conflict is the relationship between Judaism and Islam. Now, Islam is a tremendous driver. But the question of religion, and you can't overlook what that is. And he started reaching out to Muslim leaders both here in Palestine and across the world, asking the question, what can Islam make a space for a Jewish presence in Ard al-Islam, in Islamic land, a land that's sacred to Islam, which has its rules and it has a very deep place in Islamic religion and ritual and rite and story. He's asking that question because, believe it or not, religions do change, slowly albeit, and who changes them is religious leaders. And that question and going out to ask and to start that conversation, learning what could it look like? Could it be a state? Is that acceptable? Not a state. What could it be? A hudna, a long-term hudna? What's acceptable in religious in Islam? And one of the other objections to the Oslo Agreement, when the prime objectors was Hamas. And all of a sudden in the mid-90s we started hearing about Hamas and the suicide bombings and this rejection of acknowledging Israel's right to exist, saying we're not giving up that Palestine is the whole land, let's be real. And when the suicide bombing started, at a certain point Israel captured Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, who was the Sheikh of Hamas, the kind of spiritual fan of Hamas. And Israel's perspective was, their line is we don't negotiate with terrorists. Fine, people say that, I don't know, whatever, that's their position. But Rabbi Fruman said something else. He said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, Lord is one." Meaning, what's going on in reality is part of God, and our revelation and our religious thought is not only guided by the prophecies and the books. It also has to be guided by reality, because this is also God's revelation. And you can't be blind and come to this land and say that Islam is not here. You can't be blind and say that God hasn't created that Islam belongs here, and the Palestinian people are here. So in his conversations with Yassin, first in prison, and after Yassin was freed, he even invited him. Fruman traveled to Gaza. The IDF said, we can't guarantee your safety. He said, fine, I'm a guest. And one of the little snippets, the sound bites that I remember hearing about from those meetings, listening to Sheikh Yassin to the rabbi, he said, what happened in Oslo? He said, your heretics and my heretics got together and signed a piece of paper. He said, you and I, Chacham Fruman, we could make peace in 5 minutes. So that's a story that should awaken some reflection, thought, stop. And what does it mean to work to peace from a religious? Generally we try to protect the conflict by saying it's not a religious conflict. God forbid it's a religious conflict. It's political, but you can't deny religion's place in how we serve, how we identify ourselves, our connections to the land, our serving the land. The place of Al-Aqsa, the religious or heritage connection of the Jewish people to the West Bank. Those are religious. They're parts of religion. And so Rabbi Fruman was doing some interesting things. He was meeting with Arafat. There was a lot of back negotiations and little chances of trying to step in and reaching out to religious leadership, to the point where Prime Minister Arafat offered Rabbi Fruman to be a minister of Jewish affairs in Palestine. And there's close relationship and a real relationship. So that challenged me, and also my own sense of my own anger and recognizing that's not exactly holy. And something else that Rabbi Fruman, it's very natural in a conflict where I'm sure most of the talks you've heard is the Palestinians say it's our land, here's the proof. And the Jews say no, it's our land, here's the proof. They'll bring up the Bible, they'll bring up this, we'll point to UN resolutions and all kinds of things. We'll both basically prove why we're right and they're wrong. I want to tell you, there's a kibbutz here, which is one of the first kibbutzim here in the modern times, after 67. And Rabbi Fruman and his wife Hadassah he was the first rabbi of the community. And Hadassah, his widow, told me the story a few years ago, and it's a very thing that Rabbi Fruman taught over and over and over again, that he said when they brought us the beginning of a new town, a new settlement, very hoo-ha-ha, the press is there, whatever, and they showed us to our new house, the new caravan, the trailer home that we were moving into, and we got to the door, and Rabbi Fruman stopped at the door, and he said, they said, welcome. And he said, I can't go in. I said, what do you mean you can't go in? He says, there's a sticker on this door. The sticker's wrong. peace. What do you mean the sticker is wrong? The sticker is the slogan of the movement. It says, Eretz Yisrael Shach Am Yisrael. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. This land is our land. That's like the slogan of the movement. He said, no, it's backwards. You can't make a Jewish home in this land on such an arrogant statement. He said, what do you mean it's backwards? Yeah, he said to turn it around, switch it around. What do you mean switch it around? He says, no, the people of Israel belong to the land of Israel. And belonging is a very different notion than owning. And he said, if I'm honest, this land belongs to God, like all land. Our people have a long relationship, a deep belonging. We have in our tradition, we have a covenant about what it means to be in this land. And we have to serve that belonging. But belonging, unlike ownership, is not exclusive. There's other people that belong here. Islam belongs here. Christianity belongs here. The Palestinian people belong here. The Israeli, the Jewish people, lots of people, other people belong to this land too. And it's a process of maturing, of thought, growing and evolving and developing. And Rabbi Fruman really taught that and lived that for many years. And so these ideas were there challenging me, around me, and things like that spoke very truly to me as a person. Like I mentioned, like the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, it is God's land. It says very clearly in the Bible, God says to the Jewish people, because you are like guests and sojourners with me in this land. I don't think we can find a peace without that statement being true for both peoples. I don't think until Palestinians can say the Jews belong to this land, we won't have peace. And until Israelis can say the Palestinians also belong to this land. And what is this land? Is this land a little half of the land with a gash in the middle? No. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And from the sea to the river, the Jews will be here forever. River Rams, wherever the Rhine is. But both people's identity is to the entire land. And that's a big problem with the two-state model. You can maybe get there as a compromise, but if you don't say that clearly and have that something that both people can say, neither side have been heard, neither side really can trust the other side, and here we are. You know, Shadi mentioned about soldiers, Israeli soldiers going to the army. You know, one of the great horrific legacies of Oslo is this. From the Oslo Agreement on, we had a two-state solution. We had areas A, B, and C as designated in Israel. And what happened was the ability to move, to just be anywhere, to know, to meet each other was largely taken from us. 18-year-old Israelis going to the army now, that means they're born in 1998, 99. That means they grew up in the Second Intifada. It means their largest perception of a Palestinian is terrorist, murderer, and vice versa. Who do Palestinians meet today except for settlers, soldiers, the checkpoint? That's our interaction with them. So I'll skip forward a little bit. One of the things, me and a group of a whole bunch of people, kind of students of Rabbi Fruman and other people, Israelis and Palestinians around here, about 5-6 years ago, started saying, okay, Rabbi Fruman and some of his Palestinian partners are working on this level. What's going on down here? Because the political discourse is stuck. Like I said, our leaders, they almost can't talk to each other because it's showing weakness. Their peoples don't want it to talk to each other. The same day, you drive down the roads here, we're all driving along. If I get a flat tire, odds are a Palestinian car will stop and help me. And it happens, life keeps on going here. We're living next to each other, we don't talk to each other. And what could be done on a ground level? So we started trying to work from that place. And it was interesting because some of the main people that started joining the work, they were the young people. You know, on the Israeli side, a lot of kind of second or third generation settlers, Jews who were born here, and parents were born here even already, for who the connection to the land is a little bit kind of post-ideological already. They're not in that whole movement of the 1970s, 80s, we're going to conquer the land, take back acre after acre, kind of that was here. They already were born here, they grew up here. And also a lot of older people who remember life pre-Oslo. And life pre-Oslo was not perfect. It was a Palestinian who held the Palestinian flag could be arrested. I mean, it's not rights in great harmony. But I don't think anybody would deny that the situation was a lot better than it is today. On the level of what's become, what the occupations become since then, what becomes terror, the frustration. And we found a lot of people who knew each other and remembered that and had those memories. During Ramadan, we had these break fasts. I remember there was a Palestinian came here for the first time. He was an older man, and he talked about how being here is the first time he tasted something of what life was like here in the 90s and before, when there wasn't. I can tell more stories about this. 3 months ago, I gave a talk. Me and Ali spoke in a Jewish town, just near Beit Shemesh, and it was like a house session. It's one of the things we do here. Reaching out is just going out and meeting communities, people in the community organize, and we go out and give a talk. And one of the women there grew up in Kfar Tzion. Kfar Tzion is a kibbutz in Gush Etzion. I think it was the first settlement, the original first settlement post '67. It was also kibbutz here in the 1940s. And she was one of the kids that grew up there. She said, when I was a kid, Ali's from Beit Omar. And she said, after we finished the talk, she raised her hand and says, when I was a kid, we used to finish school, come home, and run down to Beit Omar and go play, and run through the town and meet with friends and go to the natural springs out here and play in the fields. So I tell that to my kids, they think you're crazy. The thought of entering a Palestinian town and coming alive is for an Israeli Jew, feels that it's a death sentence. So a lot of those people started also stepping in and asking, what can we do on a local level? Listen, we're not. I wish Bibi called him off, and he doesn't. But what's our responsibility? And for me, the question then became like, every one of us living here has a responsibility in this conflict. It's not just for our political leadership, our religious leadership. And we started looking for on-the-ground work to do it. And one of the first things we realized was, where do we even sit to talk? To bring a Palestinian to a Jewish town, there's security procedure for, like I said, Israelis don't feel so comfortable going to Palestinian towns. There's the Rami Levy supermarket over there. It's a supermarket where both Israelis and Palestinians shop. It's a commercial relationship. It's not a place to sit and see each other as equals, even, especially now in the last year because of the violence. You see there's soldiers checking you every time you go in, and as a Palestinian, you reach to get your ID, and who the soldier is sitting there, he doesn't know what you're reaching for. So my first partner that I met was a guy named Ziad, and we started a project we had a piece of land we wanted to work kind of outside of the Palestinian village. It was a piece of land. We thought this would be a place where we can bring a rabbi and a muhtar together to sit. And for a lot of kind of anti-normalization, political reasons, the project itself didn't get to the ground. But what started happening was this network of people in this area. And here's what the real project's all about: taking responsibility, meeting, and it's trying to do something. And what does it look like? I'll tell you. I remember I lived in Bat Ayin, and there was a Palestinian farmer who had land right next to the town, kind of just underneath the houses. And the Israeli Supreme Court said the land's his; he has the right to work the land. But oftentimes he'd go out to his field, and kids from the town would go out and start throwing rocks. And then he'd call back to his friends, and they'd come out. And in 2000, 2008, 2009, there was a lot of things escalated quickly from those places. So we found out where the farmer's from. We got in touch with him, and through my friend Ziad, I talked to the head of security in Bat Ayin. Head of security of the settlement. He's a good guy. I know him. He's a friend of mine, Shimi, and he knows what happens. These things make headaches because what starts from then is then reprisal attacks, and it's a cycle. And who are these kids going out there? I'll tell you they are. They're the same kids whose friend was murdered when they were 14, and now they're 19, and they're going back, and they feel abandoned, and they feel betrayed by the whole system, and for them it's up to them to protect our land, and the old people are sold out, and the army doesn't do anything. We're out there. That's their story. I'll also point in, I think 85% of this conflict is youth at risk. They don't have a place to channel the frustration where this conflict is. But we did. I gave Abu Jabr the family, I gave him the phone number, and the next time he called, and sure enough, Shimi went out there with his Jeep. He said, called them back, took the kids back to their parents, said, keep your kids in school, gave the security to professionals. And I don't know if that's peacemaking, but it's a little step. It's a little step. And when a friend of mine named Shimon, his brother, was driving from Kiryat Arba to the Gush and was attacked with rocks, and his car flipped over, and him and his little baby were killed in the car. And I'll tell you, my friend Shimon, he grew up in Kiryat Arba. Their family are all strong soldiers, and he went out and created he started an outpost about 2002, But when some of the Palestinians found out that we know Shimon, they said, listen, what happened is horrible. The death, kid being killed, that's prohibited, it's against, it's not serving us. And they asked to go visit the family. And somebody called Shimon, got in touch, and he said, there's some Palestinians who want to come and visit the family in mourning. And would you be open to receiving? He said, if people are willing to come, I'm not going to say no. And they came, and we brought 4 or 5 Palestinians to Tekoa, sat in Tekoa Dalit, outpost, and sat. And I know how much it touched Shimon. I know Shimon's been involved in this kind of work since then. He's been a person in that town with a lot of détente work between them and the Palestinian village nearby. These little acts of people taking responsibility, doing something, and crossing those lines and showing, because the easiest thing to say in this conflict is there's no partner. And we both have an onus to prove to the side that there's a partner. That's a job of civil society more than nice political proclamations and whatever we want to say up there. But that's a place where we do have agency as local residents. And that kind of started this work and this network in about 3 years ago. It was a very powerful clip. We looked at him and said, where is he from? He says, from Beit Omar. I said, wow, Beit Omar is all of 5 minutes away from where I live. And so we arranged the meeting, and we came here to this piece of land. And we sat here. None of these buildings were here then. There was a little hut right here. And I met Khalid, because kind of Ali, this network of Palestinian nonviolent activists, and the story of the Awwad family and everything that they went through and the prices they've paid and where they've come to in their real place of leadership and looking forward and trying to raise. And I remember talking to Ali. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. It reminded me of speaking to a diehard Zionist in the 1920s. And somebody who's out there looking to bring his people forward, who sees where we're stuck, who sees where we can go, has a clear vision how to get there. A leader, a person who's giving it all, a patriot, a person who believes in their people and is serving them. but it's certainly in a wise way, that sees the obstacles and is looking how to move forward. And I told Ali what we've been up to. He said, listen, the next time you need a place to sit and meet, you're welcome to use here. So a week and a half later, I called Ali. I said, hey, why don't we, I'm going to invite 7 families, you invite 7 families, we'll come together, let's see what happens. And we started with these family meetings, and then started from that, like a women's group that started meeting. And they started growing and keep on going. About 6 or 7 months of that kind of activity was happening, all kind of people getting excited and things, ideas starting. And then one evening we finished around 8 p.m., about 70 or 80 settlers and Palestinians sitting here, talking, hearing, listening, hearing challenging things, asking challenging questions, but meeting. And that night we finished around 8 p.m. At 10 p.m., like I mentioned, those 3 boys were kidnapped from just over there. And then this whole area from here down to Chevron was closed, and the military was searching, and we went through the crisis, and the rockets started coming from Gaza, then the reprisal rockets and this and that, and then they found the boys were murdered. And we brought a few Palestinians wanted to go and visit the families and to visit the mourning tent again. On the way back in the car on the radio, we heard that Mohammed Abu Khader, a young Palestinian in East Jerusalem, was killed and murdered in a brutal way as a kind of a surprise attack, and they suspected it was a Jewish revenge attack. We said we got to do something. What do we do? We called for. We said let's make a joint strike against violence, a hunger strike. And to our relief, it was Ramadan. There's a Jewish fast day coming up, so we called it for the same day. But it was our first kind of time. Up until then, everything was very behind the scenes. A person invites a friend, a phone call. The first time on the Israeli side, we sent on the email list here, come to a statement against violence. We're gonna right here on the junction there. We had the afternoon prayer where there's a special service. One of the main rabbis of the area, named Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, he's kind of like a founder of Gush Etzion from the late 60s, came and spoke and talked about a Jewish accounting of the soul. The Palestinians met here. I read a letter from Ali to the Israelis, and Rabbi Hanan, one of the Israelis involved, came here and did a learning with the Palestinians, both on a religious basis, of reflection, what's our responsibility, taking account the fast day, what is this about, and we broke the fast together here. 140 odd settlers came out for that, and instead of what normally happens, which is, when the times of crisis in the Gaza war, by then it was already fully blown, we kept on meeting. We had plans for a summer camp going. Now the war's working. You're thinking to throw a summer camp for Israelis and Palestinians, settlers and Palestinians to come sit here while there's rockets in Gaza? We said, fine, we'll do something small. If we can get 5, 7 kids from both sides, we'll do it. We had 65 kids here for 2 days, meeting each other, playing, learning, their parents, talking, and kind of this thing growing and growing. But dialogue obviously is not enough. Dialogue is, in a certain way, it's cute and sweet, but it's also a deep place where transformation happens. The project kept on growing, and I'll just kind of give a little perspective on what goes on here on a weekly, kind of daily basis. We continue with those people-to-people meetings. They're important. They're critical. We have youth photography workshops for kids on both sides, photography, the summer camps, women's workshops. There's a few inter-religious groups with religious leadership from both sides. In a few weeks, we're having our first teachers pilot session. We're inviting local teachers to come and talk. I think it's a little bit crazy to think about bringing the classes together. But if we can bring the teachers together and talk, and then hopefully they're going to sign up for an extended kind of workshop over the year. From that comes the Palestinians to visit this Israeli school. Nissan's going back in Versa, engaging with youth groups and the youth cohort that's really taken off and is an incredible thing. All kinds of meetings, and then a lot of also it is responding to the violence, which I mentioned before. People taking responsibility, responding. If a mosque was burned there, to go and be there and say, "This is not us." When the attack in Duma 2 summers ago, we had 300 Israeli settlers out there in the street with head rabbis saying that this is too far. Violence against, for us to see this coming out of our campus is too much, and trying to make that conversation to open up our school teachers and our youth counselors about there is a problem with violence and hate. And kids are growing up in a conflict zone. It's like, of course they hate each other. That's not the question. Is what do we do? Where do you address that? Do you step up to it, or do you let it fly and then the odd kids fall off into violence, or what do you do with it? And also receiving groups here, both international groups, but also a lot of local groups. I think we've had over 2,000 Israelis on their way to the army that have sat here for a conversation. Like I mentioned, those are kids doing a year of preparation before going to the army. Like I said, 18-year-old Israelis at this point have probably almost never met a Palestinian face to face. So for them to sit here for an hour and a half and hear a conversation alongside a Jew, for who them is a Jewish warrior, a settler, a person standing for their people's truth, and hear it alongside a Palestinian truth, and looking to try to create a new discourse, a discourse that comes, like we say, from the roots. That's the name of the project. Something that comes from the bottom, engages both people's narrative, refugee, settler, all these things. We have to engage them, not try to hope they won't bite us in the end. And that's what the work is. It's tiresome, exciting, engaging, enriching. And I'd say what we're really, the long-term kind of strategy is working quietly behind the scenes a lot, and engaging with local leadership. And when the local leaders, find those, what do they call, like the pinball or the linchpin kind of people in society. When a mayor comes, in a meeting between just recently was I won't say who, but there was a meeting here between two mayors of a Jewish and Palestinian town next to each other. And from that kind of comes some new. So the next time there's an act of violence, there's a straight connection that they can talk and they can handle and go to their communities and talk about what's going on. Advocating, and each one of us also say a deep part of it is there's some of the work is intra and between us. There's also a lot of homework to be done in both of our societies. I know Shadi mentioned the Tahrir, and we talk about the Palestinian nonviolent movement. And on the Israeli side, as Israelis we do a lot of engaging with the army, and talking, finding the people within the army establishment who have a moderate view, who understand the nuances, and try to encourage them with the civil administration about advocating for Palestinian building rights in Area C, all kinds of events, and really shooting a lot of directions. But today there's over 16,000 people have come through this little piece of land in programming of all different kinds. That's what we're up to.
That's great, 16,000.
Sure. Yeah. January 2014, so just 2.5 years we've been around.
Linda.
I will, if we want to, I'll send out a piece of paper, and there's a website, you can check all that stuff out, and that kind of thing too.
What about
Tahrir, it happened 2 years ago.
The beginning.
Yeah, the beginning was for 2 years ago, and have a really strong beginning because I didn't know if you watched the video. It's also on the website, Tahrir, that we did the kind of activities in a place near Yatta, which is Palestinian people and Jewish people and people, international people. They came to our land and they planted trees, and each one.
The Tahrir is a purely Palestinian-led project. It's kind of, but a lot of the Palestinian partners in Roots, which is this initiative, they're also the partners in some of the partners in Roots. That's just kind of right. Yeah.
What feedback are you getting from young people? What are you hearing from them?
Like the people participating in the project, or?
From the people who participate in the project, the feedback of what we are doing. First of all, they come and they are trying to understand what we are doing. And then they start, some of them, they will start to refuse what we are doing. As a young people, we don't understand the real game that's happening here, the real conflict. But I believe that our young people, the young people that I met, the young people that in this group, I think they were smart enough, strong enough to understand what we are doing here. And the moment they understand, they start to support us with what we are doing in their own way, in the way that they believe in. Because of that, when we saw that, we decided, okay, in this youth group, each one can make a change. Each one is a leader. Each one of these youth can do his own piece in his own way, can do the piece in the way that he believes in. So it will be strong enough to commit and to continue his way. So we have this youth, each one have his different way. We all just collecting all of it together, each one vision, and just trying to learn from each other. So they support us with what we are doing after they see and they live what we are doing here.
It's a bit of a shock. I think for 98% of the kids coming to the youth group, that's the first time they've ever met an Israeli or Palestinian. It's really the first time they've ever met somebody, at first, for most of them, almost all of them.
What language do they speak to?
We do a lot in translation, pretty much translating between the Hebrew and Arabic. What was amazing, the Israeli kids, that was like the first thing they said is like, we have to learn to speak the language. They actually they had an Arabic teacher and started learning and over the summer there was like that, the last year's group did like a 15-course Arabic class, so at least they can, and now we're starting a Hebrew class for the Palestinian side. So there's those basic things, that are there. If I'd say in general, I kind of protract from that from how the communities like responding, how do people respond to the project in general? And one is that there's definitely like a sense of betrayal that comes up. People feel like they're betraying themselves to talk to their sides. When we live in these over-politicized senses of ourselves. If I was to go to talk to an Israeli, I've somehow justified everything they've ever done. Or I've talked to a Palestinian, that means I'm okay with therapy. And how can you sit with them while they're, and on the Israeli side around here, I think the main reaction to this project is a cynicism or like an apathy/cynicism. Like, okay, you found a few people you can talk to, but what's really going to change? Which is definitely that's very, it's a very, from people's experience, it's a very understandable reaction. In general, there's the hardcore extremists who don't want to hear about this or against it. And on the Israeli side, I can talk about. In this area, that's 10% of people. I'd say most people are in that 40 to 50% of people who are just think they're cynical about it. And then there's another 34% that like in some way believe are open to it and are interested. Like for instance, when we do a house session in one of the towns here, there's generally always 15 to 25 people sign up. They want to be involved. They want to come and find out more. And what we've been doing now is kind of designing programming that engages them in a way that's close to them, but kind of also pushes them and brings them in. Kind of, for everybody in this project, everybody involved. It's not what we were born to do. To think like this. There's a lot of personal transformation that comes on that event, and the goal here is that through that process, in meeting, when that Israeli teacher met them, why did the teachers project start? Because an Israeli teacher was here, and she asked one of the Palestinians the day after one of the attacks in Tel Aviv, and she said, "What did they say in your school in the village this morning?" And I said, "I'll tell you what they said, because I went into the classroom, I spoke and talked about how this is against Islam. Killing people in a restaurant is not Islam. It's not what it is to be our people. This is haram. It's prohibited." She said, "Wow, that's not what we hear about." And so that's kind of the typical success story. She heard about it from here, she came to a talk, and then she came, and then from that she's like, okay. Because a lot of people, our sense is definitely the majority of people on both sides ultimately want peace. They want it, nobody likes the violence. But of those people even supporting violence, a lot of it's because they don't see another way. And it's very hard to hold up. Like I said, peace is a dirty word, it's a shameful word. So to hold up and get people to try again, it takes a lot from people to go back to that. It's much easier to say, no, we're right, we're wrong, and that's, you see the political, like both sides, there's a lot of unilateralism going. The PA saying we're going to get Palestinian freedom by going to the International Court by a UN resolution, and Israeli saying we're going to decide that this is the boundary, we put up the wall, we pulled out of Gaza, and there's not really a dialogue. And that's the problem with those kinds of actions, is they don't build a partnership. That's roundabout answer.
Why did the youth, or even anyone that is involved with that really is supporting this, do they tend to be secular or really religious, or is it a mix?
I mean, the Israeli leadership is all religious here.
But I mean, the people that are really supporting this group.
People who come to your group.
Like I said, on the Israeli side, amongst the adults, it's almost 90% religious. Amongst the youth, it's more mixed. It's probably 50-50, 40-60 on the Israeli side of the youth. Like there's more, like some more of the kids, they're teenagers. Not so cool to be religious, I think, for teenagers.
I guess I can understand the structure. Say you invite these people and they come and they talk with each other. Are there continual follow-up sessions where we get together and continue talking, or is this, how does that work?
There's kind of different ways. There's the first level of outreach, which is a lot of us going to do a talk in someone's home. Then once they get the sign-up list, then they're on the mailing list. So then during Ramadan, we'll turn to a bunch of them and say, hey, we're having because you can't have so many people at the same time. But then we'll invite them here, and then they come here for the talk, for the breakfast, and afterwards we broke into groups, 3 or 4 smaller circles. It's kind of a person more experienced doing a little kind of mild facilitation, and they're talking. And from then somebody will have an idea. Some of them themselves get more involved. I think one of our challenges, like what we've been reading a lot the last month about, is how do we do better second engagement stuff.
Yeah,
Keep them going.
That's what kind of seems. I mean,
yeah.
One time is good, but how do you
right.
continue?
That's definitely our So we kind of now for this year we have like a lecture series going on now, a monthly lecture in Arabic and in Hebrew about Islam and Judaism. Kind of because a lot of people say I don't know anything about. I mean that's a way for somebody who's not ready to go be a peace act to jump into it all, but that's a curiosity people have. They want to find out more. There's another series starting about Israeli and Palestinian society, about what's going on. What is the experience of the conflict? What does occupation mean for Palestinians? And somebody to talk about what building issues for Palestinians. And that's for a lot of Israelis, that's something they've never been open to think about, because that's the enemy, and we're fighting. Then there's also kind of an open cafe, kind of once a month. There's a monthly email that people who are on the list know that they can come and see more. And our hope is like this year, especially, we've had some groups that more in dialogue, long-term groups that came out. Our hope is through these events, the people who want more will step forward, and they're going to be the ones who will really kind of go into a. We have a debate like how much the resources are limited. How much can you, and to make those small, more intense dialogue groups, there's worth in doing that. But I think right now, if I'd say strategically, the next 6 months for us are really about focusing on kind of key community leaders around here and engaging them right now more strategically. And the dialogues will keep on going. We'll keep those monthly events going that people can come and the community kind of grows. There's also a process here of like kind of building our political position. You know, right now, Roots as a point of principle, we're not adapting one solution to the other. We kind of see that once you are the two-staters, the one-staters, the four-staters, then other people don't talk to you. You know, so it's important to keep that. One thing I think that is common, all of us see that a political decision or a solution based on separation of the two peoples it's not even tenable. We need to build joint interests. We need to build something that people are going to eventually come together to work for that peace. If you're interested, a number of people here are involved with an initiative called Two States, One Homeland. It's a joint Palestinian-Israeli initiative. Essentially, I'll tell you the plan, particularly the plan is it's a two-state model with the 67 borders, but it's an open border, and it's a confederation between the two states, meaning we have a joint economic council and infrastructure development and environmental issues and security are all one. It's a confederation model. There's two states that are bound together. Recognizing that both sides need national aspiration. That's something I, as a Jew, I need a Jewish state. That's what I want, not because the world's going to attack me, because that's what I want. I want a Jewish society that's based on what our tradition has to give to the world and to give out to our people. To live out, I envision Shemitah and debt relief as a part of what we're about here. And those values, if it doesn't have to be I'm not saying a theocracy, but those Jewish values where like I don't have to watch commercials for things that aren't kosher or have that are part of my life. But that's a Jewish culture going on. Okay, so and I think for Palestinians too, for Palestinian national aspirations to come, it's something that's been denied for 400 years. And it also needs to achieve. So that way, I think that's why. But then you go, so why not two states? Because denying Palestine, denying Jews, Israel is also missing something.
What kind of local backlash from the authorities do you two face?
We've got a lot of winks with the authorities here.
Oh, like winks, okay.
We get wink, yeah. I think, this, right. We didn't ask for permits for any of the buildings here, meaning there are illegal Palestinian structures or a legal settlement, depending how you look at it.
Oh, that's messy.
A little bit tricky, right? We're trying to really, in a deep level, we're trying to confuse the status quo. The idea is you're building something is a little bit different. We try to keep a really good relationship with the Israelis here, especially. I mean, that's our role, is protecting our partners in the sense of keeping the conversation with the civil administration, with the army. We brought the colonel who's in charge of this area here for talks with Palestinians, and some interesting things have come from that, including kind of like simulation work for his soldiers before they go and stand on checkpoints. Bringing Palestinians to do a talk with kind of the commanders in here to try to get them to understand better. And we Alavai, the army would just go in and all the checkpoints will be taken down tomorrow, but it's not going to happen. So it's important for us. It's important. And also we do the permits for like the activities we do. The civil administration we work with them to get get permits, and we do a lot of work also trying to address people who can't get permits and say why, and then go confront that and help that. And a lot of kind of behind the scenes legal stuff that we do with the authorities. And there's voices there that really see this. There's a voice there in the Israeli military and the civil administration that are some yes, some no, but there's a lot of voices that see this is critical kind of work. So it's mixed.
And then what are you doing anything illegal?
Here?
Yeah, in the occupation eyes.
In the occupation eyes, just take a look around. You'll see you're full of illegal things. It's illegal to build in this land.
Mm-hmm. Is it illegal for you to say anything like you've been saying?
No. I'm a free person, and I say whatever I want. Nobody can control me.
You're not inciting violence.
Inciting peace is more troublesome.
Yeah.
But the question of normalization, though, we're very. I'd say one thing is we're not very bombastic. I mean, we don't like press. We don't like the press coming here. We don't try to we don't do a lot of stuff in public, because there's a lot of people are not into this kind of stuff. people are apathetic, cynical, there's people, but on the Palestinian side, also normalization and to be cooperating with settlers is not acceptable. So we try to do things quietly, and we have our tacit winks of we have our connections both in authorities on both sides that they know, and we try to massage those things. I could say more off camera about it, but and some of them, I think some of them, even people who are technically were against it in theory, to working with settlers in the PA. Like I think some have seen that there's actually a power of something. There's results that come out of this also. So there's a cause to be made there, and I think Ali's a very smart leader on the Palestinian side about knowing what's good to hide and what can go out, and kind of walking that fine line. Because one of the main things here I think for both peoples is trying to lead your people, trying to be an activist in any way. Especially around a conflict, is you have to maintain the trust of your people. Like I can't tell Israelis here we're standing against the occupation. For them, the occupation means that you're denying the Jewish connection to this land. You're telling them we have to leave our homes, and that's justice. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really. Anti-occupation activists are the enemies of my community, because we see them out there protesting and yelling at us and taking down our chopping down or whatever. So it's important. At the same time, as if you're Palestinian, you're working against the occupation. That's what we're working for. So it's a lot of working the fine line there. I often tell people, if you come up to an Israeli and you say, like, what do you think of the occupation? You're going to get a shutdown. Occupation, because you're basically sticking a finger in their face saying, you. If you talk about lack of building rights, if you talk about Israeli army arrest in the middle of the night, you talk about everything that occupation actually is, you'll find a lot of resonance. You'll say that's wrong. Most people would say that's wrong. I don't like that, but this and that. It'll be a very different conversation, and that's kind of what we're trying to do is find a way to bring that conversation. One of the issues we've done a fair amount is a Palestinian town, a very small, about 30 houses here in the middle of kind of the Jewish area, Gush Etzion, and they haven't received a building permit in 40 years. So we actually helped pass people here, Jews here with the village, passed a master plan for the village that would add 300 units into the town, and there's kind of a lot of ongoing conversation. It was passed, the civil administration accepted it, they worked on it, then it got backlash. They said, what are we doing? What do people say? The next intifada, they're going to shoot from the second floor windows right into our town, because it is right next to the Jewish town. So it got stopped. Now we're re-going about it. We're pushing. It's a lot of this slow, and it's like I said, it's the politics is really the fear. It's really the anger and the fear that really. I remember there was a rabbi of a community here who heard about our photography workshops and came in and said, "You can't send your kids to this." And one of the women who lived there, who publicized it, she said, "I talked to the rabbi." And he says, what? He said, you're sending kids into a Palestinian area with no guards, no supervision. I can't expose them to this danger. So that's where he is. That's his, it's his fear. It was really his fear of something happening. And he said, I have a responsibility as the rabbi of this community to protect them. I can't. I think he's wrong. There was a conversation. I don't agree with him, but meaning that when you get down to it, so much of it is that fear, and that's for us is a deep part of the Israeli side what's guiding this conflict. And his good intention, even good thoughts, get swallowed by that very deep, mistrust. That's a nice way of putting it.
Impression that they don't, or
Yeah. It's a very I think for most Israelis, there's been times when there was more interest in it. I think, but like the last election, for instance, the Palestinian question was not even up there because everybody feels just kind of, especially in the last 10 years, people feel like those who want two states just want two states. They say they disagree with the settlements, we shouldn't be there, and the occupation. But I don't want to be bothered with it because I'm living my life. I voted for whoever I voted for. I voted for the left in the last election. What do you want me to do? And I think we definitely is a deep shutoff about the issue. I think for the Israeli left is in shambles. It doesn't have, because it was kind of, it led the charge to Oslo, and then what happened in the violence in the second Intifada left it with a sense of just lostness, and there's no strategy there. There's no strategy for how to answer the hard questions that the right asks. There's no real partnership with the Palestinian camp. I think anyway this conflict is going to end is going to be through some really ultimately joint Palestinian and Israeli civil society pressure for a change. And that's kind of what this work is, making the space for that kind of language and movement and those moderate voices to speak out loud. And that's part of what we try to do here in a subtle way also on the Israeli side is showing people, because people said we want security. That's what Israelis want. They said yesterday morning somebody tried to sneak into a flat with 4 knives on them to go attack. That's a daily thing. It's a pretty common occurrence. People say they want security. I can't even look over that until you say, So people are very stuck in their narratives, and like I often say, like while there's an asymmetries in the conflict, the fear or the emotion of fear and the emotion of anger that on both sides that are equally vast abysses that really hold us from being able to see the other side. And it takes some, I know for myself, it took some level of being recognized by the other side that I could say, okay, oh, you're not denying that the Jews are actually from here? Okay, and that Israel is the Jewish people who have come home. You can say that. Oh, now I can talk. I can listen. It's very people are very. I'm sure as you heard from the speakers when they present their narratives of what our cause is, it's very on, trying to prove and show. And there's definitely not a lot of listening going on. It is.
What was the question?
Can either peoples get beyond the narrative is the story of being a victim? But it's been very enshrined in both of our national stories.
Understandable.
Yeah.
But how can you even use that to move forward? It seems like a place where
I mean, I definitely Tahrir is addressing that in Palestinian society. It's definitely about like being from the people, like, and we're no longer be victims. We're not waiting for them to take the first move. We can take the first move.
and as you said, living in dignity.
Exactly. Living in dignity, because I believe we are not a victim. Because of that, I say peace comes from strong people, not from weakness or from feeling sad for each other. So that means that we are not victims. I think slowly all the people will get this idea, because when they will start to believe in that and to commit to that idea, they will just take themselves out from being victims. I believe the solution, we will go to that solution without even knowing what is it. Like many people asking us, what do you think the solution to end this occupation or this conflict? I think nobody have an answer for that question. It's just you have to continue doing what you believe in, to commit to what you believe in, and you will find that solution. This is the only way how to end this, without knowing the answer, because nobody knows the answer for that question.
If you were to have a Palestinian state
Yeah.
or a Jewish state,
Yeah.
would that include Jews in your country and Christians to live equally, and would that include Muslims and non-religious and Christians to live in your country equally?
Yeah. I think if we will have this two states, the Palestinian state and the Israeli state, the people should be equal in all the societies, in the two states. But to be divided, this is what I think will not solve the problem, because, okay, we will have two states, which is divided, but all the people are equal. But then they will start to have another conflict for the resources. Why these sides have more resources than this side. So I believe it should be, okay, two states, but open with each other, to each other. So like this, I believe the people will be equal with their rights and also with their identity, when they are open to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think within Israel, I mean, the Israeli Declaration of Independence is very clear that it's about equality for all religions, races, everything inside of that people. Every country has their issues with racism and discrimination that are going on, but I think, but this, the questions out here in the territories, which is not Israel in terms of that, that question, but that's definitely the space. Yeah, they have to be a place where all their citizens can be equal before the law and respect for each nation and culture.
And how would you address this issue of the fear that we have heard from especially the Jewish settlers, that in order to protect themselves they just have to increase their military, basically to put a fortress around them, we see with the wall and all the soldiers we see in Hebron, hundreds of them probably.
They deployed a whole battalion yesterday to Hebron. Yesterday they deployed a whole other battalion of soldiers to Hebron because there were 4 stabbings there on the weekend. I'd say one of the things that I'd say that an Israeli side particularly is talking to the question is security. For many, as you just said, for many Israelis the question is security. And what we're trying to do is open up. Security is not just soldiers. Security also means opportunities. It means engagement. It means partnerships. It means life for people. When people have a life and hope and a horizon to work for, then they're not frustrated 18-year-olds taking knives and going to commit suicide by soldier. I mean, which is a lot of what's going on. Not only, but there's a lot of that just despair ending up in those attacks. And believe it or not, I think I'll tell you something that the colonel of this area said. Like about in the heat of like last year when the shots were being fired, kids were getting stabbed every other day. He said there's a lot of pressure on him to not let Palestinians enter to the shopping center here. A lot of people are saying, how can you let, there was a stabbing in the shopping center. Palestinian took out a knife there and another one inside the store in the same chain here. And he said a lot of people said, don't stop letting the Palestinians come to work. They're working in the butcher with the knife department. And the store did take the knives off the shop. They're not selling knives or anything. But he said, listen, in the short term, it's right. It's much harder for me to keep my people safe when there's Palestinians here. But in the long term, it's better for security that they're here, that everybody's here. And he definitely saw that. And I know, it's not an easy job up there. It's not an easy job. And like I said, for us, what we found is one of the ways trying to open up the conversation of security that goes beyond just the army and increase those things. Some of them get it, some of them don't. Some of them, there's plenty that are stuck in the very, just what they learned in their military handbook is all they got. But and if you look in Israeli politics, the army has actually been generally a much more moderate voice out there than some of the politicians. But it's important for us to find is supporting that conversation and bringing that conversation here. So bringing the colonel to say that to people. Not that I'm saying they should let their Palestinian workers, because you're like the crazy guy. That the colonel should say, no, it's better for security in here that there's opportunity to get that through our thick, traumatized skulls. But that's really what needs to happen. But it's obviously the trauma is just there and it gets awoken. Every attack it gets woken up again, and that call for more protect us, and really there's no protection. At the end of the day, there's as many soldiers as you want. It takes a kid pulling out a knife. But they're sitting there trying to serve what their people are calling them to do, and that's just kind of the mess that it is.
We have 2 more minutes. So
Things as a group, are you the sheep? Or is it someone else's land? What's going on?
Actually, first of all, this land belongs to Awwad's family.
Uh-huh.
But the moment we opened our land to do and to make our dream comes true, we are already sharing everything we have with everyone comes here. So I think you're already part of all of this.
And the agriculture, is done. Some of it. I have some friends in Toccoa that buy cucumbers from here now.
Yeah.
They get sold in the villages here. The sheep is more just for the family, I think, right? The sheep and the milk.
For the family, but anyone can drink from their milk.
Oh. Okay.
So
It would be a wonderful place for volunteering and having both sides coming and working together.
we have.
Yeah, we do. That the youth do that.
We have.
Yeah.
And that sounds
After 1 month from now, we have that project that the youth will come and volunteer in this land and in another land near Beit Lahem.
There's a piece of land. There's a Palestinian farm with land next to a Jewish settlement and we're going to send a bunch of our youth cohort there to work together to help them kind of develop this land. Also trying to get the settlement to give them water actually for the land. There's a whole neat conversation going on there.
working together.
Yeah, very simple, but not so easy. Simple, but not so simple.
Sounds simpler than it actually is.
Yeah, I know.
Well, thank you for trying.
Yes.